Scott. Hi.
Well, it's 7. Are you ready, Diane?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, it's 7. We have a quorum. I'm going to call to order the August 16th, 2022 meeting of the White Bear Lake Conservation District Board. Got a quorum. We're called to order. Approval of the agenda is the next item on the agenda. Does anybody have any changes they would like to make to the agenda? And I would like to make a change. I'd like to move unfinished business just ahead of the public comments. Alan has another commitment tonight because of voting last week. And so I'd like to get him his items taken care of. So that would take item 7 and push it up after item 4. Any other changes to the agenda?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Al?
as long as you're at it, if you wanted to move the board council report up as well,
Thank you.
just because it's a placeholder on it anyway.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move board council up under unfinished business. Susie?
I would like to also add something.
Okay.
Non-regulation buoys
Non-regulation buoys in the lake. Okay, we'll put that under new business.
That's on here. Thank you.
Non-regulation buoys in the lake. Okay. And then another change that I would like to make is to strike the Birchwood buoy removal. That buoy is apparently gone. So I'd like to take that off the agenda. Okay, so those are some changes to the agenda. Anybody else have anything? I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as modified.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. We have an agenda. Next item is approval of the July board meeting minutes. Does anybody have any adjustments that they'd like made to the meeting minutes from last month's meeting? Would anybody like to make a motion to approve those minutes?
I move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the July 19th, 2022 meeting minutes. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. So now we're on to unfinished business. The first item is Tally's dock configuration, actions, and update. And Mark, would you like to just summarize that one?
So, council and I met this week, and so yesterday, and we drafted a letter that was sent today requesting that Tallies remove all their tie-offs and cleats from the south side of that dock. And do we remove? And post it as no parking. And then while looking at it, I called the city and talked to Rick Juba, and I said, now, I get a lot of mixed messages on, the neighbor says he's not allowed to use that because it's a public street end, Whitaker. And he says, no, he leases it and he's allowed to use it. Rick Juba said he's allowed to use it for service only, not parking boats. Well, if you look at a photo of that, That dock is meant for nothing. They can't get the fueling hose even out to that dock. So the only thing it's for is parking. So I would suggest that just as we did to Docks of White Bear Lake last year, who put in a dock kind of in the same area, that next year when it comes in with the diagram, that we just don't approve that dock because it does nothing. It's for nothing but parking boats. And the city's even said your agreement is for service of boats, and you're not servicing any of those boats. We've got photos of people parking 4 deep on that side, 4 boats in a row on that side, tied off together. The people who were parking on that side of Docks of White Bear Lake, if you wanted to get out, you'd have to tell them to untie and move all their boats. So it is causing a bit of an issue. So a letter went out. Was it today, Sherry?
Yes.
Went out. Thank you for doing that. And hopefully he will comply. Any questions?
Okay, thanks for taking care of that, Mark and Alan.
Wasn't a letter set in June?
It was to straighten the dock, which he did.
So you did straighten it out. Now this is to take the cleats off? Is the second one?
He straightened it out and said, we're not allowing anybody to park there, but every time you go down there, there's somebody parked there.
So in July, we're going to gather evidence to confirm or deny that he had straightened it.
He did.
He did?
He did.
And so did the letter ask him to remove the cleats?
No. It just said to bring your dock in compliance with the approved diagram that was approved. The diagram that was approved, there's a header dock, and then this dock goes perpendicular. At the time, this dock didn't go perpendicular. It went like that. It was like a banana. So we asked them to straighten it out. And then they said, no, nobody parks there. Everybody knows. Our people know. And apparently they're not. I get it. They're not telling anybody that they can't park on that side, and they're all parking on that side.
But if the cleats are not removed, people will continue to park there.
I would say that, and put even, so we have heard also of, even on the other side, for a while, the city removed the cleats along the Tally side, and people were literally tying on the cleats on the other side of the dock.
Yeah, sure. You can't. The rows are long enough.
Right. So that's why the sign is saying no docking this side.
And also, just to be clear, Susie, the letter that went out today asked them to remove those cleats.
It did.
Yeah.
And put up the sign.
Yeah.
Yep. Anything else on tallies? All right.
Okay, and then next item under unfinished business. Alan, this is listed for me, but would you set this up, please?
I certainly will, Mr. Chair. It's actually both of those items. One is the joint powers, and then the case identifier ORI number request. It's all packaged up into sort of the same ask, and so like I told everyone last month, the Conservation District does not have an agreement with the Bureau of Criminal Apprehensions to do any criminal charging or any work through their portal. And so for about the last 10 years, all complaints, formal complaints, have to be channeled through their operation, if you will. And to do that, you also need what's called an ORI, which is basically a specific number that's granted by the FBI via the state of Minnesota, via the BCA. So the BCA makes the request. After we make the request, FBI grants it. And so it's kind of an up and down the chain. And so that way, if there are offenders, they can be tracked, basically, if the FBI needs that information. So it's just part of the federal gathering process for criminal activity. Obviously, the Conservation District is not the target of a lot of that stuff, but they treat all jurisdictions that prosecute crime the same way. And so this is really just a matter of housekeeping to bring us up into basically the world that every other jurisdiction that has the ability to independently prosecute crime lives in. And so our law enforcement partners, the Sheriff's Department, the conservation officers at DNR, they all have their numbers, but there is not one unique to the Conservation District. So all the cities that you guys represent, for example, all have their unique ORIs and agreements with the BCA. So it's just bringing you up to par with those. So that's what those agreements that you're voting on, that's what that does. And so we'll sign it on behalf of the board, or at least the chair will, and then they will be signed by the BCA. BCA then turns around, requests that ORI from the FBI, and it comes back, and we're all good. So as the prosecuting attorney, I will be signing an agreement saying that I won't do anything untoward or do any shenanigans within the system, but I'm already within their system for all the other jurisdictions that I do stuff for. So anyway. Any questions? I mean, it's pretty basic stuff. It's just an agreement to be able to use the state of Minnesota's charging system is really what it is.
Okay, and just, so we have a resolution in our packet to enter into this agreement, and I would like to make a motion that we approve this resolution number 22-01.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the resolution. Any discussion? Questions for Alan? Anything that is unclear to anybody? Okay. Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. And then, so that's it for that item. And then board council report. Please, Al.
I've got, and just so everyone knows, I think Brian said it best. Last week, of course, was primary day on Tuesday, and one of the other cities that I do this sort of thing for normally meets Tuesday nights, but it is never in opposition to yours because it's the second Tuesday, not the third Tuesday. And so, of course, that city pushed their meeting until this Tuesday. So they're actually meeting right now. And so normally I would be here. I don't miss too many of these meetings, but I do have to be kind of two places at once. So I appreciate the accommodation. But over the last month, I have been in contact with the Sheriff's Department over the buoy situation, which has been resolved. But just so everyone's aware and just to make a record of it, I was talking with the sergeant in charge of the Water Patrol, and apparently Washington County is not all that excited about registering and marking buoys. But in talking with Ramsey, they'd be happy to do that for the whole lake since they more or less respond anyway. And so if you get calls, at least for the Washington County side of the board, if people want to actually register those, it'd be good for the education committee. Ramsey County will do that because it's just a matter of having paperwork on file and a sticker identifying whose it is and a contact. And so they said they'd be willing to do that, which is awfully nice of them because obviously that's going over their jurisdiction. But Michael said that they would do that. So beyond that, he said, and maybe this is consistent with what you guys have observed this summer, it's been busy, but it's also been fairly safe. So the lake's been well used, but also very responsibly, I would say. So that's from the sergeant who's in charge of all of the folks that go out and patrol. So hopefully that's consistent with what you guys see. Anyway, I'd stand for questions, and thanks for accommodating me because I have to be somewhere else.
Any questions for Alan?
Alan, there are some buoys that are not registered on the lake. They're not.
Susie, would you take your microphone and just push it over to you?
Sorry. There are some buoys on the lake that are not registered. There's one at the end of Becker's Peninsula. Then there's another one I remember seeing. I can't remember where it is exactly. Is either Washington County or Ramsey County doing anything about those?
Well, I think the law enforcement's going to be reactive to that. So, I mean, if you know where they are, I mean, I'm happy to be the conduit. If anyone sees those things.
There's one at the end of the peninsula.
Yeah, if you email me, I will get a hold of the Water Patrol and tell them to go and check it out.
Okay.
You know, they will go out and pull anything that gets complained about that's not marked. I mean, that's what their job is. So.
Okay.
Is it a buoy or is it a swim platforms?
It's a buoy.
At the end of Becker's.
It's a
buoy?
little round
Gotcha.
buoy that's little. It's about this big, and is not regulation size, and it's not registered in any way.
Yeah, if it's unidentified, I mean, if it can be associated with a property, I'm just guessing, but I don't know. But I would guess that law enforcement would probably try to tie it or identify it to a property on shore and reach out to whoever that is to ask before they clipped it and took it. But I'd leave that up to them. But it's going to start with a complaint, right? Because they're not going to, they've got better things to do than go around and try to find buoys that aren't marked. So, like I said, I'll be happy to take it up with law enforcement if you tell me where they are.
Okay.
Okay, so just to summarize that, if anybody sees buoys that seem unattended or not where they're supposed to be, let Alan know. Please copy Sherry so that we keep that file of that, and then Alan can make contact on that. Okay, any other items for Alan?
So just to verify, I mean, it's kind of hard to describe where a buoy is. I mean, unless you took a boat out there and got the GPS location off your cell phone, which maybe is the best way of doing it.
Yep.
We've always been pretty good with property address.
Yeah.
Give them the property address, we'll go out, we'll find a buoy.
if you can even be close to just identifying in front of the White House on the peninsula, something like that, just so long as there's a geographic marker, that should be about all, because they'll go out and look for it. You know, it doesn't have to have a flag on it. If it's unmarked and it's there, they'll find it. So.
Okay, anything else for Alan? Okay, thank you, Alan.
Thanks, guys.
Now moving on to public comments. We reserve 15 minutes on the agenda for items that are not on the agenda. If anybody from the public would like to come in and comment on those items, and is anybody here that would like to take advantage of that 15 minutes? Okay. Okay, we're moving on to new business. First item is approved purchase of locked file cabinet. Sherry, you want to tell us what this is about?
Yes, I don't have a packet in front of me. However, I did include just an example of a locked file cabinet that I would like to purchase. We don't have one in our office right now, and I'd like to secure some documents that need to be secured. However, I haven't gone through all of our documents, and I'd like to go through a document that the League of Minnesota City has that tells me what kind of financial documents and other personal documents should be filed in there, and I don't know the quantity of those either, so I need time to find out how many of those documents are and what type of documents I need to do it. So the cost is there. I think I put around $250, $300, something like that.
$275.
Yeah, and for a locked, and I would have a key, and then either the treasurer would have a key, or it would go into our mailbox for somebody to access.
And so, so the idea is that the board would approve up to X amount, and then you would go find the file cabinet that fits you and get it to the office or get somehow?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, well, I'll make a motion to approve up to $300 for a new lockable file cabinet.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, there you go. New file cabinet.
Thank you.
Okay, now next on the agenda is Rice Creek Watershed District data presentation by Matt Koshin.
Yes.
Nice. Correct. And Matt's gracious enough to come and share some information with us, taking time out of his personal life. Thank you for that. And so I will just turn it over to you, Matt.
Okay.
And just give me a signal when you want me to change a slide.
Okay. Sounds good.
Give me a minute. There it is. It's right there.
There it is. Okay. Yeah. I'll let you know.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah. So thank you, Brian, and thank you to the whole board for inviting me here to speak tonight. Again, my name is Matt Koshin. I'm with the Rice Creek Watershed District. I've been with Rice Creek for about 15 years. Am I okay here?
Oh, that's all right. Okay, so again, my name is Matt Koshin. I'm with the Rice Creek Watershed District. Been with the Rice Creek Watershed District for about 15 years. My role there is Lake and Stream Specialist, which means that I do water quality monitoring and I work on water quality improvement projects. So I was asked by Brian to attend the meeting, share some of the water quality data that we have for White Bear Lake, talk about some other water quality issues, and I'll touch upon some other things as well. So if you'd be willing to go to the next slide. Actually, just in case folks here are not familiar with what Rice Creek does, I'll touch on some of our background as well, where we are, what we do, that sort of thing. Water quality data, some other water quality issues. I can touch on AIS, at least what our role is, and then kind of some miscellaneous odds and ends. And then, of course, if there's time for questions, anything like that, happy to do that. But, yeah, off we go. So Rice Creek Watershed District established in 1972, so this is actually our 50th anniversary this year. We were established when all of the county boards, and we have Ramsey County, parts of Ramsey, parts of Washington, parts of Anoka, petitioned to establish us in 1972. You can see our mission there is to manage, protect, and improve water resources through flood control, water quality, and other programs. We span many different political boundaries. I think when we go to the next slide, I have a map that shows it. There we go. We're 186 square miles, so a pretty big area. 3 counties, like I mentioned, 28 cities and townships, more than 50 lakes, and 185 stream and ditch miles. So it's a pretty big area. You can see White Bear Lake in the kind of lower right-hand portion of the map there. And then, Sherry, if you click a few times, I think some arrows will pop up. Thanks. Yeah, a couple more maybe. There we go. Just wanted to give you an idea of how water flows through the watershed here. So when White Bear Lake is flowing out, it goes to Bald Eagle Lake. Bald Eagle flows towards Peltier. The upper part of our watershed, which includes parts of Forest Lake and Columbus, that flows down towards Peltier also. Then water flows through the Lionel Lakes chain of lakes, down toward Long Lake and New Brighton, and eventually out through Fridley to the Mississippi River. So it's a pretty big area. Lots of different cities and communities. We work on lots of different issues. Sherry, if you click ahead, I think a couple times. There we go. Our primary functions. One of those is regulatory. So I'm not going to be talking, the last one there's water quality. That's what I'm really here to talk about. But just to let you know some of the other things that the Watershed District does. We do have a regulatory program that's to manage stormwater runoff. Also, we administer the Wetland Conservation Act, so impacts to wetlands and that type of thing. Floodplain protection, that's part of the regulatory program. We have, I think, 120 miles of public ditches that we manage. Some of those actually nearby, kind of in between White Bear Lake and Bald Eagle Lake. We have a communication and outreach program. We actually just hired a new person into that position that's starting this month. Collaboration, the Watershed District does wish to collaborate with other organizations like the White Bear Lake Conservation District. Actually, in our new watershed management plan, that was listed as one of the higher priority things, is to do a better job of working with other organizations. So this is very timely that I can be here and speak with you all tonight. Then water quality, the last one. That's mainly what I work on. Again, lake and stream specialist. I do water quality monitoring. So that's mainly what I'm going to be talking about. And when I say water quality, what I really mean is eutrophication or algae blooms. So these are, I'm going to be sharing a couple graphs here in a second, and the graphs are going to be highlighting phosphorus, chlorophyll A, and Secchi disc. These are the most basic things that we monitor related to water quality that has to do with eutrophication or algae blooms. So the basic calculus here is if you take clear water and add phosphorus, that will stimulate algae blooms. Phosphorus is like a limiting nutrient, and it's algae food. Chlorophyll A is a direct measure of the amount of algae. And then Secchi disc is a way that we can measure water clarity. It's literally just a disc that you can lower down through the water column and gives you some sense of the water clarity through the lake. But really, I mean, this is what we're trying to avoid, is situations like this. Algae blooms, and especially blue-green algae blooms, which can be harmful. Luckily, this is not a photo from White Bear Lake, but this is a photo from Centerville Lake, another one of the lakes in our watershed. So this is the situation that we want to monitor. We want to prevent situations like this, and then when it is occurring, we work on projects to try and remedy that. So who monitors? It's a group effort. You see all the different lakes around our watershed there have different colors because many of them are monitored by different organizations. So myself, I'm out on some lakes, all those kind of pink lakes there. Those are the ones that I'm out on regularly. White Bear Lake, in that orangish color, is monitored by Ramsey County staff. Ramsey County's been collecting the water samples for many lakes in Ramsey County since the late 70s, early 80s. Beginning about 5 or 7 or so years ago, they switched their business model, I'll say, and now the Rice Creek Watershed District actually pays Ramsey County to do that work. So Ramsey County's continuing to collect that data. Rice Creek Watershed District pays them to do that. Here's the first graph. And I realize this is going to be hard to read and there's a lot going on here, so I'll just draw your attention to a couple different key pieces of this. First of all, you might wonder why everything is kind of, all those bar graphs are kind of squished down at the bottom there. It's kind of hard to see what's going on. But the y-axis, the scale, goes up to 160 for total phosphorus and chlorophyll A. With some of our lakes, we need that space because there is a lot of phosphorus and a lot of algae in some of our lakes. And we standardize our graphs. But in the case of White Bear Lake, total phosphorus and chlorophyll A are both very low. I'll draw your attention to the two lines that are going horizontal across the graph. Those are the state standards. So the state of Minnesota sets standards for both total phosphorus and chlorophyll A, or algae, and you want to see those corresponding color bars, total phosphorus in blue and chlorophyll A in green, be below that. If they're not below that, if they're exceeding those state standards, then a lake would be designated as impaired. So Bald Eagle Lake was designated as impaired for many years. It's about to come off the list due to some of our efforts, I believe. White Bear Lake is nowhere near that line. It's not impaired. It actually has excellent water quality. And if we go ahead to the next graph, I just stretched out the y-axis here, stretched out the scale so that you could see the information a little bit more easily. Not a lot of variability from year to year in total phosphorus. I suppose if you go back to the 70s, you see some higher bars there. Not sure what to make of that or even necessarily how those data were collected. If we go on to the next one. So this is Secchi disk, and this is water clarity, the measurement with the disk in the water. The longer the bars here, the better. Because if those were stretched out all the way down to the bottom of the graph, that would be like water clarity going all the way down to the bottom of the lake. There's also a state standard here. That's the line going across. White Bear Lake easily meets that state standard. In this case, you want to see those bars longer going across that line.
Question.
We move on to the next one.
So
Yeah.
from 2016 on, is that probably due to zebra mussels? Because it's substantial. Increase. Sorry.
I'm getting to that one next.
Sorry, bud.
No, that's all right. I anticipated that because I knew those bars would kind of draw your attention. But really, I think what the entirety of the data set suggests is that water clarity in White Bear Lake is very good. Total phosphorus levels are low. There's not really a trend in any direction with total phosphorus. Chlorophyll A, on the other hand, there is a little bit of a trend, and with Secchi disk, there is a little bit of an improving trend or an increase in water clarity. And if we go to the next slide. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. I'll step through a couple more slides, and then I'll get to that point, Mr. Gantz, that you brought up. But just to say, overall, how does water clarity in terms of phosphorus, chlorophyll A, compare to other lakes in the area? If you were to go to far northern Minnesota and the boundary waters, of course, you could find some lakes with slightly lower productivity. White Bear Lake, though, is low. It's one of the best lakes in the Rice Creek Watershed District in terms of phosphorus levels and chlorophyll A, and one of the better in the metro area, really. There are lakes like Peltier Lake where phosphorus levels regularly exceed 150, approaching 200. White Bear Lake is around between 15 to 20, just to give you a sense of that scale. And the Metropolitan Council has a grading system based on all of this information, A through F. Some lakes in our watershed, unfortunately, do get C's, D's, and occasionally a couple of F's. White Bear Lake is consistently an A-grade lake. And typically some of the lowest phosphorus and chlorophyll A values in our watershed. Metro-wide, so for all the Metropolitan Council lakes where data are available, typically less than 20% of lakes receive an A grade, so it's in good shape. Next slides. Okay, now here's right what you were getting at, Mr. Gantz, about recent years, a decrease in chlorophyll A, increase in water clarity. Yes, that is due to zebra mussels. If you click again, I've got the photo there. Zebra mussels were, I think, discovered in 2014. Probably took a few years for the density of the zebra mussels to get high enough that they were impacting algae. Of course, zebra mussels are filter feeders, so they'll filter out the algae from the water column and increase water clarity. That's definitely happening on White Bear Lake. So other water quality issues that I'll touch upon. So the past few slides talking about those eutrophication style parameters, that's Rice Creek Watershed District's bread and butter when it comes to water quality. That's mainly what we focus on. Some of these other water quality issues, and I'll highlight a couple of examples, we work on them, but it's not our primary focus. We work more in a supportive role. So for example, we get lots of questions about like mercury in fish tissue, PCBs, trichloroethylene is an issue in some lakes. Most recently in the news is PFAS, perfluoroalkyl substances, also known as forever chemicals. People often associate this with 3M chemicals. 3M did manufacture many PFAS chemicals, but plenty of other companies and products also contained it. Again, these issues all listed here are things that really fall outside of our watershed management plan, our guiding document. So they're not things that we work on directly, but we do play a supporting role, and we like to share whatever information that we have with partners. So, for example, the PFAS issue, this is something that's been a really hot topic lately. I mentioned earlier that there are state standards for things, and if you don't meet state standards for certain water quality parameters, there's an impairment listing. That is true for PFAS and fish tissue. So there are lakes around the metro area that are now being listed for that because of elevated levels of this chemical in fish tissue, including three lakes in Rice Creek watershed. Clear Lake, Johanna, and Little Johanna are now all listed as impaired for that. And I'm guilty of kind of mixing up these terms, PFAS, PFOS, and the terms are often used interchangeably, but it's a family of chemicals. I think PFAS is kind of a general term referring to that whole family. So if there's confusion about perhaps seeing on the screen or me saying PFAS or PFOS, they're related, but there are some separate chemicals. PFOS is the one that can accumulate in fish tissue and cause issues. So this is a slide from the Minnesota Department of Health. I'm not an environmental toxicologist. I don't work on issues like that, so I'm really just sharing information that we've gotten from other partners. But some of the issues here, developmental effects, thyroid issues, I think in some cases there's potential carcinogenity. So some concerning issues with PFOS to be sure. Where does it come from? Lots of different sources. So again, people think about 3M when they hear the PFAS or forever chemicals, but it actually comes from many different places. And as MDH, Minnesota Department of Health, notes here, it may be possible to clean it up in the landscape and then thereby slowly decrease the contamination over time in a lake or river. But directly getting it out of a lake or a river or fish tissue once it's in there is not really possible. There's lots of different consumer products that actually contain this. So nonstick cookware is a big one. Firefighting foam is one that I've heard many different times. Waterproof apparel. So it's a pretty commonly used chemical. Luckily, only a few lakes actually around the Rice Creek Watershed District have been tested. And we don't do this testing. This is done by the Pollution Control Agency, the DNR, and the Department of Health work together to do this testing. So we don't do it. But the Minnesota Department of Health likes to brag they have I think the largest database of PFOS and fish tissue in the nation. But, we're the land of 14,000 lakes, and so it's going to take a long time to build out that database to cover every lake. So most of the lakes in our watershed, I'm sorry if we go back one more, most of the lakes in our watershed are gray here because data are not available. For those lakes that have colors like Clear Lake at the top end or Johanna, those are red, those are impaired. White Bear Lake has been sampled, so fish have been sampled in White Bear Lake for PFOS, and it is meeting state standards. So not currently a concern in White Bear Lake.
However, it does exist.
It does exist. What I've been told by the Department of Health is that in all of the fish tissue samples that they do across the state, they can almost always detect PFOS in every sample. It's just a question of an amount. Does it exceed some sort of threshold that they've set? Yep. Couple more issues here, AIS and odds and ends. I'll just touch upon these issues a little bit. I know I'm here to talk about water quality, but at least to let you know what the watershed district's role in some of these things is. So when it comes to invasive species, we sometimes play a role. There's a complicated flow chart there on the left, but a key dividing point at the top of that flow chart is the question, is a potential invasive species related to or associated with water quality degradation or not? And if it is, then it's something that the watershed district is going to actively work on to manage. If it's not, then we're going to play more of a supporting role. Our watershed management plan clearly calls out water quality management, water quality monitoring, improvement. But AIS, for the sake of recreation, it does not. So that's really the key there. So again, if there's a direct link to water quality degradation, as there is like with common carp or with curly leaf pondweed, then the watershed district plays an active role in managing those things. And we do have a very active management program for common carp. If there's not a direct link to water quality degradation, like zebra mussels, milfoil, even purple loosestrife, we play more of a supporting role, helping to gather information, share what information we have with partners. Just a couple of odds and ends here to round out the presentation. Lake levels, the watershed district plays a very minor role there, really more associated with preventing upstream and downstream flooding. If there's like a change in a culvert size, change in a culvert elevation, that sort of thing. We don't play an active role in water pumping. We certainly don't regulate water use for consumption, anything like that. Wake boats and water quality has been kind of a hot topic lately. Actually, our managers have talked about it several times in meetings. The watershed district, again, doesn't have the power to regulate that type of thing, but we are watching some of the research coming out of the U of M and St. Anthony Falls lab, looking at how those things fit together, if wake boats might have an impact on water quality related issues. And last but certainly not least, shoreline stabilization. The watershed district has a very active program, grant program, to partner with residents to do shoreline stabilization and to partner with cities. So if it's not already on there, certainly would encourage the conservation district to put a link on your webpage. So residents that might have erosion issues on their shoreline can work with the watershed district and get grants to help them stabilize their shoreline for water quality benefit. I think that's all I had, and happy to chat more or answer any questions you might have. Yes, sir. Mr. Carrington.
Forever chemicals, and they get in the water, and then you've had a list of things that they could do to human beings, like liver problems and that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Is that from just swimming in the water, or is it from eating fish from the water, or is it from, heaven forbid, drinking the water?
I believe the health effects listed there were general effects, probably more focused at eating fish, or if it's in a drinking water supply and you're consuming lots of it over a long period of time. But I'm not 100% sure on that. I've heard people ask the Department of Health in the past, am I going to get sick from swimming in it? And the answer is always no. It's consumption through fish or through drinking water. That's what I've been told.
Who determines what parameters are sampled at the various lakes?
Yeah, good question. So the primary parameters that I talked about, like phosphorus, chlorophyll A, there's other data collected like nitrogen, suspended solids. I didn't present all of that here. Those are, there's kind of a common suite of parameters that most environmental monitoring programs do. I'd say that's the case for us. That's the case for Ramsey County, we work with on White Bear Lake. Deviations from that standard set of parameters is typically done to support special studies, but not long term.
Okay. And just to follow up, so all the lakes likely get similar sampling, and is any any consideration given to lakes like White Bear Lake, where there's a lot of public activity? Mm-hmm. There we have a marina with a fuel dispenser, mm-hmm. That kind of thing. And is there any consideration given to those types of lakes as to different parameters to sample?
I would say because of the size of White Bear Lake and because there are three distinct kind of bays or arms, there's already increased amount of sampling in terms of sites. So the data that I showed was average data for all three of the different sites that are in White Bear Lake throughout many different depths actually in the lake. Sampling more towards the shoreline or associated with a specific land use, or in this case, fueling use, something like that. Typically, environmental monitoring programs don't sample around specific shorelines like that unless there is some special study or, potential violation of a law or something like that.
Okay.
So it does happen, but regular monitoring programs, it's typically at a deep spot in some point of the lake. In the case of White Bear Lake, 3 different spots.
Yeah, well, one of our big concerns is managing that big commercial marina area called Commercial Bay. And one of the ongoing concerns is how big can that get before it starts impacting water quality. But my guess is that phosphorus isn't a big issue with commercial use. It'd be other kind of things like petrochemicals of various kinds. So we would be talking to the PCA about those kind of things?
Yeah, I would say if your concern was more for petrochemicals, spills in the lake and potential long-term effects of that, yes, that would be more of a Minnesota Pollution Control Agency thing, or the DNR if there are regulations pertaining specifically to how those are operated. And if there was ever a spill, then it would be the DNR that would typically respond first with the conservation officer. But the Pollution Control Agency would likely be the one that would be more involved in petrochemicals, that type of thing, yes.
I have a couple questions.
Yes, sir.
I'm delighted and pleased that the lake is clean, and thanks for your work. What effect does geology have on this? I mean, oligotrophic lake versus a mesotrophic versus a eutrophic lake. Is it fair to compare oligotrophic on the boundary waters to a mesotrophic or eutrophic Lake Jane, Lake Drummondville, Lake Olson? We have a deep lake that's a certain size, but very deep for its size. So how does geology fit into that?
Excellent question. And no, it's not really fair to compare Boundary Waters Lake to other lakes because of the geology, yes. So I did it in the slide there just to give you a sense of, throughout on the sliding scale of phosphorus, kind of how those things shake out. But even within our kind of small geographic area, we separate lakes by shallow and deep. So there are different state standards for shallow lakes and deep lakes. White Bear Lake being a deep lake, obviously. Peltier Lake would be an example of shallow lake. The underlying geology plays a role in kind of the baseline water quality of the lake. But when it comes to impacts, anthropogenic or human impacts, less so of a role. Some of the factors I think that set White Bear Lake apart from some of the other lakes in our watershed, White Bear Lake itself has a very small watershed. So there's a small area of land that can drain and contribute phosphorus and other nutrients to the lake compared to Bald Eagle Lake. Now that I'm thinking of it, I wish I would have thought of putting a slide like that in there. I think White Bear Lake has roughly a 1-to-1 or a 2-to-1 watershed to lake area ratio. Bald Eagle Lake is something like, it was either 13 or 19-to-1. Peltier Lake is about 150-to-1. You get down to Long Lake, it's 500-to-1. So that all of that contributing area just sends more and more nutrients to those lakes. So that's a big part of what sets White Bear Lake apart.
And my follow-up question is, I've been reading a lot about microplastics. Is that part of your research or part of your evaluation?
That would definitely fit under kind of the new and emerging things that are being monitored. Rice Creek Watershed District doesn't monitor that, so that would definitely fall under something that we might play a supporting role on. I've heard Pollution Control Agency doing some research there, also the U.S. Geological Survey. Because the Watershed District lacks any type of regulatory authority or land use authority, anything like that, again, we're more of a supporting role for that type of research and information.
Thank you.
Very welcome. Good questions.
Hi, thanks for being here. I'm wondering, how often is Ramsey County sampling water out here?
So Ramsey County is on White Bear Lake about every 2 weeks. Let's see, May through September.
And you mentioned that you guys get involved with curly leaf pondweed and carp. Are you guys doing anything right now on White Bear with either of those?
Right now we are not, because both curly leaf pondweed and carp do not appear to be an issue on White Bear Lake. So for both of those invasive species, I'm quite certain that both are present in White Bear Lake, but because their density is below a certain threshold, the assumption is that they're not having any impact on the water quality in White Bear Lake. There are other systems where we're 100% certain that the carp population are above a certain density, and they're definitely contributing to a water quality problem, like Long Lake in New Brighton.
What does curly leaf do to water quality?
So curly leaf pondweed, like Eurasian water milfoil, is an invasive species, but it has an unusual life cycle. So it's oftentimes referred to as a winter annual. It starts growing late in the summer or the fall, survives under the ice, grows very rapidly in the spring, and on some lakes, Bald Eagle in the past, Centerville Lake, Peltier, can be a really high biomass of that plant, and then it dies and decomposes around the 4th of July, give or take a week. So it's that decomposing plant material releasing nutrients into the water column can exacerbate algae blooms.
Okay.
And are you currently doing anything for purple loosestrife?
No, we're not. So purple loosestrife is one of those invasive species that, again, is not linked to water quality, so we play a supporting role. I will say we've gotten a sharp increase in calls and requests just this calendar year about purple loosestrife. It seems to be up in density in many places all around the metro area. I believe the Department of Natural Resources has some resources or information that they can share on that topic, but yeah.
Okay.
And just to dovetail off Meredith's question, how does a person, or how do you know when the carp population becomes excessive?
Good question. We don't really know until a population survey is done. And the tools to actually do a population survey, and in fact, all of the management and research related to common carp has really just been developed over the past 15 years at the U of M. So a lot of that is new. But we don't really know if common carp are a problem until a population survey is done. But there are many clues ahead of time that give us a good idea. One is just the overall condition of the lake. With all of the water quality data that we have on White Bear Lake suggesting such a high quality resource, highly unlikely that common carp are above that threshold where they're impacting water quality. The other clue is submerged aquatic plants. So typically a lake that has a really high population of common carp, you won't see very many plants at all. And that contributes to the algae blooms that you see in those lakes. So it's overall water quality condition, and then submerged aquatic plants are the two clues. But then a population survey is what confirms it.
Any other questions for Matt?
May we have a copy of some of the graphs on your presentation?
I will send it to you.
Okay.
Absolutely, yeah. We have the presentation, any of the water quality data or graphs, or if you want raw data and spreadsheets, if any of you are ambitious like that, I'm always happy to share any of that information. So you have the presentation. My email was on that. You can also find it on our website. Happy to share whatever information we have.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thanks a lot. That was super informative, and thanks for taking time to come out and talk to us. And I, for one, hope that we can figure out a way to coordinate more closely with Rice Creek Watershed District in the future. So,
thank you.
See where that goes.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me, and we're absolutely open to collaborating more.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Okay. Next item on the agenda, and maybe we covered this already, but Susie, it's the non-regulation buoy in the lake. Is that, you raised that with Alan, and was that? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on from that one. Okay. So we're on to reports and action items. Executive committee. So the executive committee did meet, and we talked about board's responsibility to prepare a management plan for the lake. And Alan did finally find out from the DNR that they do not have a management plan in place for White Bear Lake, and we had hoped that we could dovetail into that somehow. So we're at a position or at a point where Alan is going to request from the DNR if they have a go-by or a sample for a similar lake that we could look at and see what that looks like. So that was one thing we discussed. Commercial Bay, we talked about the Tally's dock layout, and so we heard that tonight. Also the BCA agreement, we talked about that, and that was on the agenda tonight. Administrative assistant, administrator. There were two items that came up. One was a computer. The computer that the Conservation District owns is not a good quality computer by today's standards. And so we would like to get a new one in place for Sherry so that she can be more efficient and not have to be switching between computers all the time. The executive committee suggested that Sherry pick out the computer that she thinks would be appropriate for the work that she's doing and then bring that to the board. And then the board can take a look at that and approve that, I guess. Okay. And then also there's a phone issue downstairs that Sherry is looking into that we discussed.
Can I make a comment?
Oh, yeah, please.
Question. Didn't we approve some money for a computer a couple months ago?
Yeah, did we actually approve?
We did.
Okay, yeah. So,
2023, yes.
yeah, okay, for 2023. That was in the budget, I think, for 2023. And so rather than waiting, Sherry will bring that forward, and then hopefully we can find money in the reserve to take care of that sooner than later. Yeah, and that was about it for the executive committee. Any questions on any of those items? Okay, on to Lake Quality Committee. Mike?
Lake level today is 923.23.
923?
923.23.
All right.
So it's down 4 inches from last month, but getting late in the year, that happens. We haven't had a lot of rain, although we did get like 3/4 of an inch. We have an ordinance that you can no longer pump water or appropriate water from the lake when it gets below 923.5. So that kicks in. Lake temperature is now 71 degrees. It was 78 degrees last month. These cold evenings have certainly taken its toll on the water temperature. And then the last thing is Phragmites. We're going to do a survey. It's planned for this Thursday, day after tomorrow. Anybody who would like to come along is welcome. There's plenty of room. It won't take as long as the Eurasian Water Milfoil survey. It goes to, it's a ride around the lake, right along the shoreline, nice and close. Check out all the, anything we see where the reeds are growing. We have, there was about 5 or 6 sites last year that we found it and it was treated. And so that's what we'll be doing Thursday, alternate date Monday. So if anybody wants to go for a nice pontoon ride, let me know, and I'll give you the times when we're leaving. 2 people from the DNR are coming out to actually do the survey, and they'll teach anybody who wants to come how to find Phragmites, what to look for. Now for the treatment part of it, last year we budgeted $2,500, and this would be the 3rd year that we would be looking at possibly treating Phragmites. The first year Anoka County paid for it. Then we budgeted $2,500 for last year. Anoka County still had money left over. I contacted them, and they paid for that treatment too. So we didn't budget anything for this year. I believe Anoka County is probably out of money. We collected $2,500 last year and didn't use it. So I would like to make a motion that we spend from the general fund up to $2,000 for account number 6045 for potential treatment of Phragmites for 2022.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second to spend up to $2,000 from account 6045 for Phragmites treatment. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
That's it.
Any questions, Mike?
Mike, what was the level last year at this time?
I did not bring that number with me.
Okay.
Sorry.
Any other questions for Mike? Okay, thank you, Mike. Lake Utilization Committee, Mark?
Okay, the LUC did meet tonight. We have several things on the agenda. First one, 4955 Lake Avenue. There's, as some of you know, by Optimus Beach, there's a wooden structure going into the lake. The person who had it had let it go sort of, I don't know, south, lack of a better word. It wasn't in good shape. I've got some complaints, sent him a letter this summer saying bring it into compliance. And so he started working on it, but there's an old section of that dock. When the water was low, there was some, it's hardwood. I mean, it's terrestrial, but it's still growing in the lake. And you can still see some pilings mixed up in there. So we're going to send another letter telling him to remove everything that's not serviceable. And then, let's see, 315 Wildwood Avenue. That was discussed, and letters are going to be sent to the neighbors on either side. What's going on there? FYI, there's a vacant lot. The person, after years and years, decided that they want to sell that vacant lot. In the meantime, the neighbors on either side have been, I don't think anybody's been complaining about it, but have been sort of, pushing over into that ADUA of that vacant lot. So now they just want a letter saying that next year the neighbors have to stay within their ADUA. And let's see, what's the other one that we don't really need to talk about or vote on? 2022 permit application. Oh, yeah, we can go through this. So in your packets towards the back, Sherry really went through the Form 5 with a fine-tooth comb, and after years of neglect has gone through it and made some appropriate changes. So if anybody, I'm assuming everyone's had their packet, has had a chance to go through that. If anybody has any questions, or wants to have a discussion, because we'd like to adopt these tonight if possible. So that's what's going on. Any discussion? Okay.
Do you want to make a motion on
that? I move to approve the changes to White Bear Lake Conservation District Form number 5.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the changes made to the Form 5 as laid out in the revised version in your packet. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay.
Thank you, Sherry. So next thing on the agenda, it was brought up that the Your Boat Club had not filled their business application out this year yet. So they were notified to fill out their business application to do business on the lake. They turned it in last week, and it was handed out, loose after the packet tonight. So at the Lake Utilization Committee, we voted unanimously to bring it forward and have it approved, and I so move.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion?
Is there any penalty for them not having it done earlier?
$60 fee, but I just kind of waived that. I'd never done this before, so I had found that they were on the lake, so I asked them to send the permit in. I'm learning the process.
Yeah, and I don't know if, there is, it's right up top.
Yeah.
A late fee of $60 will be assessed. I can call them. You want me to call them and say, hey?
I can call them.
Okay.
If you want me to, yeah.
Let's see. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
So I'll amend it to say I'd like to approve it with the caveat that they pay the $60 late fee.
Is that okay for a second? Okay, and that's okay with the second. So any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes.
So that was your boat club.
City of Birchwood.
The city of Birchwood. I wasn't here last month, but apparently we had a representative in here, and our attorney also represents Birchwood. So basically what happened was last fall, the city asked that they move the dock over 10 feet. Everybody said, yes, that's fine. They got everyone together. But when they put out their application for their docks, they didn't put in the change. So when the dock installers went out to put out the dock, they were putting it where it was set, and then somebody said it's supposed to be over 10 feet. Anyways, now we're here, and they put in their amendment, and we looked over it. Everybody's okay with it on either side of the dock, and the city's good with it. The associations are good with it. It passed unanimously through the Lake Utilization Committee. So I'd like to bring it forward and make a motion to accept the amendments to the Elm app and Birch Dock app.
We have a motion and a second to approve the Birchwood amendments. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
And then just something else to bring up, and we talked about this a few months ago, these VBRO boats are starting to show up. Like if I wanted to loan my boat out, all I have to do is trailer it down to the launch, you come, I hand you the keys, I drop it in, you pay me, right? It's like renting someone's house. So they're starting to get very popular. There's two that we know of. One was the MPQD rentals, which we approved this summer for a runabout and a pontoon boat. However, it turns out that they also have jet skis, and they like to keep the jet skis right next to everything. And when Sherry called to question about a complaint we got from the public, they kind of hemmed and hawed, from what I understand, and said, well, sometimes we rent them out. So I'm going to call them tomorrow and tell them to cease and desist, that until they show us the insurance information for those two jet skis, and maybe make an amendment to their application that they can't rent out the jet skis until they get all their stuff squared away. I'm assuming that everything they own as far as rentals is under one big umbrella policy, so I'm not that concerned it's not insured. I personally have a little issue with the fact that when you came to us with the two boats, you didn't come straight out and say, by the way, we have two pontoons or two jet skis. So they say that they want to have at least one jet ski there in case one of the renters has an issue on the boat and they can zip out and take care of it, which I completely understand, but not renting. So that's going on. Also, there's a company called Silverfin Kayaking, and what they do is they go around, same sort of thing. They've got a little SUV with a four rack for either a kayak or a canoe, and they will drive to any lake, and they will meet you, and they will drop them into the water for you, and you pay them. I was surprised. It's like $300 and some a day to rent a kayak, but they're doing it, and I don't know. I mean, this is, as I said in the LUC meeting, this is growing pains. This is nothing we've ever had to deal with before. Rentals have always been in the marina being rented. So I think this is just to put a bug in everyone's ear that this is something that's coming. I don't know how I've been talking with Alan Council about how we even regulate this, how we go about, like who's going to go up to them and go, who are you and why are you doing this? I know the sheriffs aren't really thrilled about it, and we don't have any ordinances that I know of against it. So just to let you know that things are moving and we're looking at them, and we'll keep continuing to bring this forward. But I'd like to hear any opinions if anybody has them.
Any opinions or questions for Mark?
I was wondering, where are they keeping these MPQD rentals?
Where do they keep them?
Yes. Are they training them
Matoska
in?
Park.
Matoska, they have a license through the city of White Bear Lake to use Matoska.
To bring them in?
Yeah. And park their trailers.
Okay.
So that's all landside too, so we don't deal with that. I'm happy. I will say this about them. I am impressed that they really didn't have to come to us, I don't think. And they wanted to do things the right way. And they had a glitch with their insurance the first time through, and they took care of that. They've done everything we've asked. And again, like you've got these other companies who obviously are doing this, and they're not even, letting anybody know. Like I said, you could go to Ramsey Beach, drop your boat in and rent it to somebody, and we would never know the difference. So.
Okay, any other questions for Mark?
I have a question about the Lake Avenue dock. Isn't that a permanent structure, and does that need to be permitted yearly?
I've looked at that, and from what I understand is once it's a permanent dock structure, just like we don't have the VFW or Lions Park reapply every year, once a permanent dock has been approved, and I think that was approved decades ago, we can probably unapprove it, but once it's not an annual like the other docks that go in and out. Once they've gotten their permanent. Like I said, just like I'm pretty sure like Lions Park and VFW have those docks there. They're permanent. They don't license them every year.
So the Lake Avenue one has a permit from long ago?
That's my understanding. We can look that up. I have to say that, and Sherry's been doing an awesome job. That basement's a mess. And so we've been looking and looking and looking, but from what I've heard from people who have been here a long time, yes, it was approved. But we haven't found anything yet.
I do, go ahead.
I thought we had them come every year for the permanent dock at Lions Park.
Do we?
And we waive the fee, but we approve it every year.
Okay. I will look into that. I should know that, to be honest with you, and I will look into that as well. But I know it's been there for a very long time, and then he let it go dilapidated, which it can't be. So we sent him a letter to say fix it up, but then he still left some of the old pieces in. So if you want me to look into having it removed, or where the permit is, or if it needs to be permitted every year, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, Mark, I just wanted to ask, because I did go through this form and I had to look at it in detail, but if you looked at page 5 of the Form 5, on number 20, it does say the application is, this application is for permanent docks or structures in the lake, and if it is, then if it's a new one, it's $5,000, but it says annual renewal is $1,000.
Okay.
So does that mean everybody with a dock needs to,
Just if it's permanent.
everybody with a permanent dock?
Yeah, mooring and or permanent
Needs to
structure license.
renew.
Yeah, I will get to. I have to see Alan once a week anyway. So next week or the end of this week, we'll go over it and see what the legal ramifications are, because I really don't want to answer without counsel.
Yes, that's good. Good questions to raise, and
Yeah.
at least we can get to the bottom of it. And another item, just to throw a little more on, is that if it is an approved permanent dock, and we've talked about this, Mark, so I know it's nothing new to you, then maybe we need it marked at the end, similar to how the other docks are required to have reflective materials on the ends to alert snowmobilers late at night kind of thing. Okay, any other questions for Mark? Okay, moving on to Lake Education Committee, Scott and
In terms of, the first item here is the letter property owners. Is that, Sherry?
I sent them out July 14th to the city and to Admiral Dees, and the city responded to me that they will have their maintenance contractor next year during bloom time look at that area and take care of it.
Okay. Excellent. Adopt a Drain and Market Fest update. There is a report on in the back of the packet, is where we are today. We've made progress, though I am a little worried that we might be flatlining before we make the goal. So this is what was sent to all 5 cities. We did get some feedback from Delwood because they really don't have a formal stormwater system, and they think that a lot of the 21 drains really aren't storm sewer drains. There are other kind of things. So they have asked that we not pull them out as we have. So he said, okay, until we come up with some other resolution, we will not do this in the future. Pull them out. And I'm not sure what kind of situation Birchwood might be in, because there's like, 16 drains that are in their data. See, all this data comes from the mosquito control district that was then fed into the statewide program, and they just picked it up from them. And it's known to be kind of dodgy. In the case of like City of White Bear Lake, it's because a bunch are missing from that database. But apparently in the case of Delwood, possibly Birchwood, there are actually things that aren't proper stormwater drains in their database. So I think we might I'll have to be very careful about the next 2 or 3 months, remaining in the program. We'll focus on the overall thing, but it's just a little bit difficult to view this as a race because of the nature of the data, nature of, especially in Delwood, their stormwater system or lack thereof. So that's where we are there. We did have a Market Fest booth on the 28th, and that went fairly well, though most of the people there basically walk by with food in their hands, and they aren't stopping by to see educational exhibits. Now, across the street, Excel was handing out free light bulbs, and I think Ramsey County had some sort of spinner kind of thing that probably drew people in. So if we do something like this in the future, we might want to consider budgeting a bit more for some serious freebies. Speaking of serious freebies, we've got 3 T-shirts left over, and I don't have a T-shirt cannon to shoot them out to you, but I've got 2 larges and an extra large. So
pick them up after the meeting.
Okay. You don't want me throwing them. Okay. Okay, media.
So I'm happy to put up anything you'd like on our social media, but the things I was thinking about putting up this month are about the Phragmites survey this week, something about it that we can know people can no longer pump water out of the lake due to the water level, and then some information we got from Matt from the Rice Creek. Some of those graphs I think would be really informative on our social media, and I'll link you as well.
Okay, that's great. And we should also make sure that we get a link on the website to the cost share grants for the shoreline stabilization. That'd be good.
That would probably go under about the lake, all the other EAS, et cetera stuff.
Do you have any questions for Scott or I?
I just have a comment. My family just adopted their first drain, and its name is Brain.
Thank you.
Brain drain.
Okay, any other questions for Meredith or Scott? Okay, moving on. Treasurer's report, Mike.
treasurer's report you have in front of you in living color. And I would like to make a motion to approve payment for checks number 4780 through 4786.
We have a motion and a second to approve payment for those checks. Any discussion? All those in favor say, oh, I'm sorry, Scott, please.
I was voting.
Oh, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes.
Next is the USGS survey account status. We have $599.60 dedicated to that. I called Perry Jones. Now, for you newer board members, Perry Jones worked for USGS and headed the study of why White Bear Lake lake levels, why it went down, what's happening, what we can do, all of that stuff, and was a wealth of knowledge, learned a lot, had submarines out here looking for cold water where there might be springs coming into it, and just a whole event of things that went on for a couple of years. I talked to him, and he's retired. His boss is retired. A number of the people that worked on that project are retired. It's no longer the Minnesota USGS. It's the Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan USGS. I said, if I called them, would they even know what I'm talking about? And he said, probably not. But he certainly would, and he'd be more than happy to come and cover the topics that we would provide for him, plus all the information that he would be willing to do. Since he's retired, he'd have plenty of time to put it together. But we talked about it, and is it committed to USGS survey only, or is it committed to the work that they did and the results that we could learn from, maybe learn something from? In other words, do we have to write the check out to USGS, or could we write it out to basically he's a private consultant now, to an individual? That's my question.
And just to make sure everybody understands, this is money from way back when the lake was dropping, and a bunch of people threw money into an account that we managed, and there is what's the actual number, $500 and some dollars?
$599.60.
$599.60 that has been sitting on our books since then, and we're just looking for a way to that would be in line with that study, the general required use of that money, so that we can get that off of our books and get some benefit for it. And having the idea of having somebody come in and talk about the lake, I think would be of interest to us, but also I think to the public a bit to hear an update. So that's the item on the table.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to tie together what the USGS was doing all those years ago with what the DNR has done with their model. And was the USGS stuff just sort of pushed off to the side, or did it all feed into some grand plan?
Well, much of the USGS survey study was the impetus for the DNR to do what they did. It was also part of that lawsuit too for the DNR.
So what do we want to do about this, Mike? What are you thinking?
Well, I'm thinking it would be very interesting evening. I think we should, kind of identify topics, maybe put together an outline that the board could approve of what we would want to talk about. I really don't, since he was USGS and he's going to be using all the material that he generated when he did work for them, that it's not too far off base. So there's nobody else that could represent the USGS in this topic than him. That I think it would be okay to spend the money on an independent consultant covering the topics that the money was raised for. But that's just one opinion got 10 opinions here.
I'm not sure how any of us would really know the answer to that question, but I agree with you. I think, if we're within the intent of what that money was provided for, it seems like we would be fine.
Did Perry have any idea of how that money could be spent? Did he, I mean, since he's worked with the government agency, they gave us that money. We used that money. We were kind of the holder of that money, but it was from them. So my concern is that it should be spent with that agency.
You mean further study by the agency?
But I don't know if Perry had an idea
Yeah, I
that
did
we could
mention that
use
to
it.
him. And I asked him if there was any way that he could subcontract through the USGS. And he said, I don't think so, but I can make the call. See what happens at your board meeting. And
would be
if you
comfortable.
flat out won't do a consultant fee with the money, then he would ask USGS if they could work something out where we would pay them and they would pay him, which would, he doubted that they would do that because he didn't know anybody there anymore. They're all new people. We did discuss that, and it wasn't. It was a maybe.
What about just the fact that we're using the money for what it was intended to be used for? Does it say we have to only use USGS, or if we want to use it to pay a consultant to do the same work, can we still use it?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that.
I don't either. I just know we were holding that for them. So,
So why did they give it to us?
It was a big pot of money
Left over.
Yeah.
back in the day, and this is just money that was left over.
Okay, but the pot of money came from,
It
the
came-
USGS, and we were the agency that was given the money to, we were operating that fund and paid people out through that fund.
And did the money just come from the USGS, or did the cities kick in some money?
I
Or
don't think any money came. We came from the DNR, it came from Rice Creek Watershed. It
Yeah,
came
it came from a bunch
all
of
these agencies that were kind of on the line to do something about this lake level. And they were all very glad to donate towards the USGS study. And that's how the money came into us. It was
Okay.
all public money.
so it was given to us to pay out to whomever?
USGS.
To USGS, who was doing the lake level study.
Okay, so it came from the USGS and
No, it
other
didn't come from the
sources.
USGS. It was to
No, that was confused. I got confused on that too. It came from Rice Creek. It came from other private people to pay USGS to do the study. Now we have $500 left over from that didn't get used in the actual study years ago.
Okay, so the issue is our responsibility to all of the donors
I think you
that
have
it's
it.
used properly.
You know, it seems to me, Mike, and sorry about this, it seems like the cleanest path would be to ask Perry just to investigate a little bit on his end if he can work through the USGS in some way. And if that turns into a complete roadblock, then we can maybe look at other items. And it may be that we contact the people that provided that money and just run this idea by them and try to build some consensus in that.
For $500, maybe nobody cares.
Yeah, maybe.
It's
But
such a small amount.
And I agree with all that. It's just that we want to make sure that we're doing things the way that we were supposed to do based on some agreement that was entered into in the past.
I'll call him.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that.
Have that agreement?
I'm sure somewhere, and we should probably review that. Sherry.
Put it in the lock file cabinet.
So we can dig into that a little bit too.
Okay, the last thing is the LMC, League of Minnesota Cities, annual insurance policy, and there's a limit, if we vote correctly, there's a limit that we cannot exceed as far as our liability. And I'm talking while I'm looking for it. Okay, here we go. So we have two choices. One is to vote not to waive the monetary limits under our insurance policy, which is what we want to do. We don't want to waive the limits. We want to be constrained by the limits so that we're not oversued. The limit is $500,000. If we don't vote to not waive it, it goes up to $2 million. So I have to word this, and then the other option is to waive the monetary limits. So are there any questions before I make a motion? Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
No.
Because usually Diane says it, but she's keeping quiet.
So we do the recommended action.
Yeah.
We want to
Which
recommend
is
that we
to waive?
We do not
Not
want to
waive.
waive the limits.
We do not want to waive.
We want to have limits on our insurance rather than no limits.
Was that a motion,
That was
Mike?
his motion. That's your second.
No.
Okay.
Are we ready?
Yep.
I make a motion that we do not waive the monetary limits on our municipal tort liability established by Minnesota statute 466.04.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to not waive the monetary limits. Any discussion?
Did I get it right, Diane?
Diane?
This is recommended by our attorney.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and this is something that we do every
Every
year.
year,
And every year he recommends the same thing.
yeah, don't wait.
Don't waive. Yeah, don't waive. Okay, any discussion? Mike?
Does Sherry sign that? Okay.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes.
I'm done.
Any other questions for Mike? Okay, board council report has been taken care of already. Announcements, does anybody have any announcements they'd like to make?
I just want to note in the packet that there was a thank you note from the Wiper Lakes Fireworks Committee for donating to that.
Okay, would anybody like to make a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
We have motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We're adjourned. Thank you all for coming out tonight.